Hi everyone. Hopefully this is the first of 2 videos that I will post this week. I wanted to do one video solely dedicated to talking about your second observation paper, which you should be beginning to think about and collect data. It is due after Thanksgiving. So I know that you only have a few weeks of teaching before Thanksgiving, so you're going to want to think about when you want to gather your data. This paper is different from your first one in that you are doing a self-reflection, a self-analysis. Your data is your own teaching. I know that I haven't given you feedback yet on your first paper. If there's any major things I think you should think about as you gather data and analyze the data for your second paper based upon your first observation paper, I'll let you know. It's a slightly different paper, obviously, in that you're not looking at someone else's teaching, you're looking at your own teaching. It's similar in that you want to take the time, plan in advance to collect this data that I keep referring to, and then really have time once again to what I refer to as cook your data. Think about what it is telling you. Some people find it easier in that you're looking at yourself and you don't have to be evaluating the classroom culture or looking at markers in someone else's classroom. Some people find it a little bit scary in that you're looking at yourself and you're putting yourself under a microscope. I've talked a lot in this course about scaffolding. I want you to consider this paper as another interim step in preparing you for your final portfolio, in which you will be putting a lot of different elements of your teaching under the microscope and thinking about what it tells you. Now, this is different from your journal entries in that it's not a pure self-reflection. This is not an avenue for you to think back informally. It's a more formal analysis, just like in your first observation paper. So you will be, you should, if you want to, you can print out or pull up the observation assignment that can be found in the observation, in the assignment section on Blackboard. And I'll just talk you through a few elements of what you should be doing. So you should record a session of your teaching in any way that is available to you. If you want to video yourself, you can use an iPhone or another digital recorder, a digital camera, another video recorder. You can audio yourself if you have an audio recorder, or even an old tape player. Any way that you can have some data that is recorded to be able to look at afterwards. And obviously this is because you can't be taking notes on what you're doing as you're doing it. And also, even though I've been encouraging you to write into your lesson plans the questions you'll be asking, obviously as you're finding, there are many questions that come up that you had not anticipated, both from your students and questions that you ask on the spot. So you don't want to rely just on your lesson plan. You want to be able to look at what's happening in the moment. This paper is a way for you to look at your teaching in a dynamic context, the way in which you interact with your learners, and the way in which obviously you're using the Bloom's taxonomy and the Sternberg taxonomy, or however you want to refer to it, as a lens for looking at your own teaching, and the ways in which you use questioning to foster curiosity, to help your learners make meaning. So hopefully this paper is becoming a way for you to tie together some of the threads and the strands of our course. The paper focuses on question asking, but as you've been seeing from my comments to you over the last few weeks and the ways in which you're engaging in our different course content pieces, that all these pieces interconnect with one another. We ask questions that we plan in advance that flow from our activities that hopefully are constructivist in nature. We are being good listeners to our learners. We're grouping our learners in ways that they can ask questions and talk to one another. We are planning our lessons out in advance in a way that forces us to think about how we will pause at points to draw our learners in. Maybe you're having cooperative learning activities or problem-based learning. So this paper, as I just said before, is a way for you to start preparing also for the final portfolio, not only in that it's a reflection tool, but also in that by the final portfolio, you will hopefully be thinking not just about the different strands of our course as disparate weeks. I'll talk about this in the next video, but how they all intertwine, how they weave together for you. So you'll be recording a session of your teaching, and then, okay, that is your data. I want to say to you, I've been through this many times with learners where they might feel frustrated. Perhaps it wasn't quite the lesson that you anticipated. Perhaps you feel like it doesn't reflect your best teaching. Perhaps there was a fire drill in the middle of your lesson, or something happened, a student freaked out about something, and you feel like this is not great data. Any data you get is good data. The data you get is the data you get. So work with what you have. I will not be grading your paper based on whether the lesson went well or not. That is not the focus of the paper. The focus of the paper is how you're able then to talk about and make sense of the way in which you ask questions, how you're able to analyze the type of questions you ask, analyze the way in which your learners ask questions of you, and in the ways in which you responded. If you feel like a lot of that doesn't happen in your paper, that you for some reason don't ask many questions, or the responses you get from your learners are only simply at one level of the taxonomy or Sternberg's levels, okay, so you'll have to talk about that in your paper and maybe come up with some hypotheses of why that was the case. It will force you to think about how questions, the level of questions that you ask, the ways that your learners ask and answer questions are tied into the way that you structure the lesson. So if you don't get what you anticipated, the paper is a vehicle for you to talk about why and to make sense of it. That's what I will be considering as I analyze and grade your papers. So don't worry if you feel like the lesson for some reason was a bomb. That's not how I'm analyzing your paper. I'm not looking to see whether this was the most stellar lesson that you've ever taught. I know it can also be anxiety provoking to record yourself, so that might impact as well your data. So number 3 on the assignment sheet, again, I'm asking you to analyze your data. Think about, do you ask questions? Do the students ask questions? Do you answer their questions? Once again, I just said it, but I will say it again. I will not be grading you based on the fact of whether you did or you didn't. I want to see how you make sense of what you did. Where do the types of questions that you ask fall within Bloom's taxonomy, and what patterns do you see? So you will want to go back to that week and use that, maybe put the taxonomy in front of you as you're looking through your data and try to make sense of it. Do the same students respond to questions over and over again? Again, if that happens, that is not that is not a reason for berating yourself, but you want to be able to think about, okay, why might that have been the case? Did you have students in the front row that you always called on? Did you ignore other students? How do you make sense of what happened? How much time do you allow for think time or wait time? This paper is an opportunity for you to maybe try out some wait time or think time that you haven't done before. Maybe to do a think, pair, share as a way of engaging your learners. And then using the Sternberg article as a guide, how would you classify the way in which you respond to student-generated questions? What do you see? You've had practice with this and looking at someone else's teaching. Now it's time to look at your own teaching. I want you to write out a one-page sample transcript from your lesson. You can either type it out or write it out as you did with your previous paper. Then you will be labeling that using the Bloom's taxonomy and Sternberg's level. So you will actually be handing in to me a page that you have coded. Coding is a word from research, and you maybe make a little mark after each line of the transcript, the level of Bloom's taxonomy or Sternberg's lens. So I understand it says in here many questions are strictly logistical. A student might ask a question about, for example, can I go to the bathroom or can I borrow a pencil? And I know these aren't the questions that you're really analyzing. So you can make note of that. It will be interesting for you to see if you have a lot of questions that are just like that. What does that tell you about learner engagement? And then you're actually going to write the paper. Once you've coded your data, You want to see what do you make sense of? Do you see some patterns emerging? Again, try not to be too hard on yourself. This is an opportunity for you to really dig deep into your teaching, but try not to. I know it's not so easy it's easier said than done, but try not to be so hard on yourself if you see something that surprises you in your teaching that you don't feel so great about. This course is an opportunity for you to reflect and then to use what you find out about yourself to move to another level in your teaching. So this is all an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself as a teacher. This paper, I say it's 3 to 5 pages. If you find it has to go to 7 or 8 pages, that's okay. I'm trying to let you know this is not a 15-page paper. Consider what observations can you make about the part questions and their answers play in your lessons. What does the data tell you about the type of educational session that you have designed or enacted? How do you feel that you structured the lesson in order to allow for questions to arise? What does it tell you about your style or inclinations as a teacher? And what thoughts does this analysis raise for you about some directions you might want to take with future teaching? So you're seeing here this data is a way for you to really think about your approach as an educator, and the ways in which you use questions in your teaching. What does the data tell you? So self-reflection, obviously this paper is a mixture of analysis and self-reflection. You can, as I just said, and you should be thinking about how question asking plays into and interweaves with other techniques we've been talking about in this course. You should bring in ideas and readings from other parts of this course, not just the question asking readings. And your paper, as always, should have a narrative thread to it. You should see, you can't talk about everything in your lesson, so pick out 2 or 3 big ideas about yourself as a teacher, what the data is telling you. Do you want to talk about lesson planning? Do your questions and answers tell you something about yourself as someone who tries to be a constructivist educator? So again, use the rubric for this paper to guide you in writing this paper, how you're going to bring in the readings, and how you're going to structure the paper. Give that some thought and then go for it. I look forward to reading these. And if you have any questions in the next few weeks, please do send them along and I can answer them and provide answers to the entire class. Okay, see you soon.